Hello, I'm glad you're here. Sometimes the heaviest burden isn't failure. It's what never got a chance to happen. That's what today is about, unfulfilled ambitions. Before we begin, I want to ask you a question, something to reflect on. You can write it down, or just let it echo in your mind. Here it is. How often do you catch yourself thinking that certain choices from the past close the door to something that once mattered to you? Do you feel regret now toward yourself, your family, past circumstances? Do you feel as if your old plans are gone for good? Maybe it was the major you chose. Maybe it was your first job. Maybe you once dreamed of starting your own business. Maybe you planned to change careers. Maybe you wanted to write a book, learn a language, move to another city, live differently than you do now. And then life took its course. Children, a mortgage, a loved one's illness, unexpected circumstances. And those plans got pushed to the back, into a drawer, into your head, into the question, what if? That question can be incredibly persistent. It returns in moments like these. When you see someone doing what you once dreamed of. When you hear a song from the time you still believed everything was possible. When you're lying in bed at night and your thoughts wander freely. If you know that feeling, this episode is for you. But I want to say something right at the start. This episode isn't about achieving all your dreams. It isn't about suddenly turning your life around 180 degrees. It's about something else. How to live with regret in a way that doesn't destroy your everyday life. How to transform the weight of unfulfilled ambitions into something that can enrich you rather than suffocate you. Because the truth is, most of us won't fulfill all our dreams. That's not pessimism, that's realism. Life has limits, time has limits. We have limits, and that's okay. So the question isn't, how do I fulfill every dream? The question is, how do I live well, even if some of them remain unfulfilled? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we begin, I have one more question, and I'd really like you to answer it in the comments. Not because it helps the algorithm, but because putting something into words sometimes helps you see it more clearly. The question is, what is one plan or dream from your past that still comes back to you sometimes? What is it? And how do you feel when you think about it? You don't need to tell the whole story. One sentence is enough, even one word. It matters to me because I want to understand what you're carrying. And I think it will matter to others too, to see they are not alone. Alright, let's begin. Before we talk about what you can do, we need to understand what we're dealing with, because this isn't just ordinary sadness, it's something more complex. Retrospective regret, huh? In psychology, there's something called retrospective regret. It isn't the same as ordinary regret. It's a specific feeling that arises when we look back at our lives and see a gap between who we wanted to be and who we are now. Psychologist Thomas Gilovich at Cornell University studied the nature of regret for many years. In one of the most well-known studies, conducted with Victoria Maidvesh, they discovered something surprising. They asked hundreds of people about their biggest regrets. In the short term, people more often regret things they did, bad decisions, mistakes, missteps. But over the long term, the proportions reverse. The more years pass, the more we regret what we didn't do, opportunities we didn't take, paths we didn't choose, dreams we didn't try to pursue. Gilovich called this the omission effect. And it's exactly this effect that makes unfulfilled ambitions hurt so much. Why omissions hurt more? It's worth understanding why this happens. When we do something wrong, compensatory mechanisms kick in. We rationalize, we look for explanations, we learn from mistakes. Over time, the pain decreases. But when we don't do something, those mechanisms don't work the same way. Because there's nothing to rationalize, no clear lesson to draw. There's only the question, what if I had tried? And that question stays open forever. In one experiment, researchers asked participants to imagine two scenarios. In the first, someone invested money and lost it. In the second, someone had the chance to invest but didn't. And the investment turned out to be highly profitable. Which scenario produces more regret? The results were clear. Over the long term, people regretted far more the things they didn't do. Because failure has an ending, an unused opportunity doesn't. Let me tell you a story. Mark was 28 when he came up with an idea that thrilled him. He wanted to open a small cafe in his neighborhood. Not just any cafe, a place where people could come with laptops, work, talk, feel part of a community. Mark had thought it through. He knew where he wanted to open it. He had a design concept. He had even spoken with a few coffee suppliers. He was missing only one thing, the courage to leave a stable job. And then life sped up. His girlfriend got pregnant. They took out a mortgage. A second child came. Then a third. Mark got promoted at work. He earned more and more, but the cafe disappeared from his plans, first postponed, then forgotten, then returning as regret. When I met Mark, he was 46. He told me a sentence I still remember. He said, "You know what's the worst part? I don't even know if that cafe would have worked. Maybe I would have gone bankrupt after a year, but at least I would know. And now I live with this question in my head, and I don't have an answer." That's the core of regret tied to unfulfilled ambitions. It's not regret after failure. It's regret after not trying. How it shows up. So, this kind of regret can take many forms. It can show up as bitterness. You see someone who achieved a similar dream, and you feel a sting. You're not angry at them. You're angry at yourself, or at circumstances, or at life. It can show up as blame. Blaming yourself. I was too weak, too cautious, too stupid. Blaming family. They should have supported me instead of discouraging me. Blaming circumstances. If only the market had been different, if only I'd been born at a different time. Or it can show up as sadness. Quiet, chronic sadness that's hard to call depression, but that turns everything gray. There's another form people talk about less: comparison. Constantly comparing your life to other people's lives, to the life that could have been yours. You scroll social media and see someone doing what you once dreamed of, and instead of feeling happy for them, you feel that sting. That should be me. That could have been me. That comparison is especially painful because it feels irrational. You know it doesn't make sense. You know everyone has their own path. And yet, you can't stop. There's also what psychologists sometimes describe as a side effect of unfulfilled ambition. The impact this regret has on other areas of your life. It can make you less present in relationships, more cynical about other people's dreams, more likely to discourage your own children from taking risks, because you regret not taking them yourself. You may not even notice it, but others might. Your partner may sense that somewhere deep down you're dissatisfied. Your children may feel that something is eating at you, and you may not know where it's coming from. There's a film that captures this kind of regret remarkably well. American Beauty, 1999, with Kevin Spacey in the lead role. The main character, Lester Burnham, is in his 40s, stuck in a job he hates with a wife he barely speaks to and a teenager who doesn't respect him. At the beginning of the film, we hear his voiceover. "In a year, I'll be dead." Of course, I don't know that yet. And in a way, I'm already dead. And that's the death we're talking about. Not physical, emotional. The sense that your real self died somewhere along the way. That you became someone you never wanted to be. That your dreams disappeared, and you didn't even notice when. The film shows Lester's desperate attempt to regain a sense of being alive. Not all his choices are wise. But the impulse itself, the desire to feel alive again, is something many of us can relate to. There's a scene that especially moves me. Lester drifts back to his youth, to a time when life still felt open, when everything seemed possible. And you see longing on his face. Not for specific things, for the feeling of possibility, for the belief that he could have been anyone. Before we go further, I want to say something important. Unfulfilled ambitions are not the same as unmet goals. That distinction is crucial. A goal is concrete. I want to lose 10 kilograms. I want to earn a certain amount. I want to get promoted. Goals can be achieved or not. And then you move on. An ambition is deeper. It's a vision of who we want it to be. Not only what, but who. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be someone who takes risks. I wanted to live by my own rules. When we don't reach a goal, we can feel disappointed. When we don't fulfill an ambition, we can feel as if we betrayed ourselves. Now that we understand what we're dealing with, let's look at the causes. Why do so many of us carry regret about unfulfilled ambitions? Why is it so common? The reasons vary, and not all of them apply to everyone. As I go through them, I want you to notice which ones resonate with your situation, because the solutions depend on the cause. First cause, the pressure of safety. We live in a culture that deeply values safety. A stable job, steady income, a mortgage you can pay, a retirement you can count on. That isn't bad in itself. Safety matters. The problem starts when safety becomes the only criterion, when we measure every life decision solely by whether it's safe. Psychologist Carol Dweck at Stanford studied for decades the difference between what she calls a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset believe their talents and abilities are set, so they avoid risk, because any failure feels like proof of limitation. People with a growth mindset believe you can develop and learn. For them, failure is information, not a sentence. That makes it easier to take risks. If you were raised to avoid mistakes, if you heard repeatedly how important it is not to take risks, the pressure of safety may be one reason your ambitions stayed unrealized. There's a study I consider one of the most important in this area. It was done by Bronnie Ware, an Australian nurse who cared for people who were dying for many years. Ware asked her patients about their biggest regrets and wrote the results in a book titled The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Do you know what was number 1? Not, "I wish I had made more money." Not, "I wish I had climbed higher." The top regret was, "I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me." I'll say it again, because it matters. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself. It's no coincidence that this regret was the most common. This is exactly the regret tied to unfulfilled ambitions. The regret of a life that could have been different. Ware described how people responded when they realized this regret. Some cried, Some went silent, but almost all said the same thing. I thought I had time. I thought I would do it someday, but someday never came. That may be the hardest truth about unfulfilled ambitions. We don't usually abandon them consciously. We postpone them. And later turns into never. Second cause, social expectations. Each of us is born into a web of expectations before we even get to find out who we are. Parents have dreams for us, often loving, sometimes driven by fear. Teachers have an idea of what we should become if we have potential. Society offers ready-made scripts, what's sensible, what's safe, what's acceptable, and very often those expectations don't align with what genuinely pulls us, fascinates us, moves us. Maybe you wanted to be an artist, but kept hearing you can't make a living from that. Maybe you wanted to work with children, but everyone said it wasn't ambitious enough, and you should do law or economics. Maybe you dreamed of leaving your small town, but every time you mentioned it, you saw tears in your grandmother's eyes or heard, "What about the family?" And slowly, step by step, you learn to postpone your desires until later, until someday, until it's safe. The problem is that those expectations don't disappear even when no one demands anything from us anymore. They stay inside. They act like an invisible script, a set of rules we follow when making decisions without even realizing it. We choose studies, work, lifestyles that make sense in other people's eyes. And often only years later, in a moment of crisis, we start to feel it, because outwardly things look fine. But inside the question appears, was this really mine? And then it hits us. For a long time we were living someone else's plan. Out of loyalty, out of good intentions, out of the need to be accepted. Not our own. Joanna dreamed of traveling. Since childhood, she collected pictures of faraway places. She dreamed of becoming a travel photographer, living out of a suitcase, crossing continents, documenting the world. But her family was very traditional. A woman should have a stable job, a home, a family. Travel is a whim. Photography is a hobby, not a profession. Joanna listened. She studied economics. She got married. She had children. She did everything expected of her. And then at 50, her husband died suddenly. The children were grown, and Joanna was left alone with the question, what now? For the first time in decades, the dream came back, and she felt both immense longing and immense anger. Longing for what could have been, anger at everyone who told her she couldn't. Third cause, lack of support or resources. Sometimes unfulfilled ambitions have nothing to do with fear or lack of courage. They're not about social pressure either. Sometimes there simply wasn't anything to move forward with. Resources were missing, very real, very concrete ones. Money, time, stability, connections, knowledge, and sometimes the basic support of another person. This is one of the most painful reasons, because there's no simple answer to why. You can't say, if only I had been braver, or if only I had tried harder. Often you were doing everything you could within the conditions you had. You wanted to study, but your family couldn't afford to support you. You had to start working earlier than you planned. You wanted to start a business, but you didn't have capital, a safety net, or anyone who could advise you. You wanted to change careers, but you didn't know anyone in the field, didn't know where to start, and the risk was too great to carry. Psychologists call this inequality of opportunity. The consequences are very real. Not everyone starts from the same place. Not everyone has a network, a financial cushion, parents who can help, or time to try again. For some people, every decision carries the real risk of losing safety. And that's why it matters to acknowledge it. Not to get stuck in resentment, not to justify yourself or compare yourself to others, but to stop carrying the weight of guilt for something you had no real control over. Because sometimes unfulfilled ambitions aren't evidence of weakness. They're traces of the conditions we had to live in. And understanding that can be the first moment you're able to look at yourself with more honesty and more compassion. I want to tell you one more story. Tom's story. Tom grew up in a small town. He loved music from childhood. He played guitar, wrote songs, sang. Teachers said he had talent. He dreamed of becoming a musician. But his family was poor. His father worked in a factory. His mother cleaned offices. There was no money for music lessons, no money for instruments, no money to go to the city and try his luck. Tom did what he had to do. He went to a technical university because it was the cheapest option. He became a programmer because it offered stable work. He earned well. He bought an apartment. He started a family. But the guitar still stood in the corner of the room, and sometimes, in the evenings, Tom played. And then the old pain returned, the question, what if I'd had a chance? Tom's story is different from Mark's or Joanna. Tom didn't have a choice. Circumstances decided for him. And that's a different kind of regret. Not regret after a decision, but regret after a lack of possibility. If this is your story, I want you to know one thing. It wasn't your fault. Not everyone gets the same chances, and there is nothing to be ashamed of. But I want to say something else too. Just because you didn't have chances, then doesn't mean you don't have them now. The world has changed. Technology has opened doors that used to be closed. The internet lets you learn almost anything for free. Social platforms let you show yourself to the world without massive budgets. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying wanting it is enough. I'm only saying the circumstances that limited you then may not be as limiting today, and it's worth thinking about. Fourth cause, the natural evolution of life. There's another reason for unfulfilled ambitions that doesn't fit either the failure narrative or the success narrative. Life simply moves on. It changes. It shifts priorities. And very often, it isn't harming us at all. We've been taught to believe that if something once mattered to us, it should matter forever. That changing dreams means giving up. That leaving an old plan behind is proof of weakness or inconsistency. Psychologically, that just isn't true. Psychologist Erik Erikson described life as a series of developmental stages. Each stage brings different challenges, different questions, different needs. In youth, we often search for identity, intensity, a place in the world. Later, we seek stability, meaning, connection, influence. What felt crucial at 20 doesn't have to carry the same weight at 40 or 50. That isn't regression, it's maturation. Maybe you once dreamed of a music career, stage lights, tours, living at full speed, and later you discovered that your greatest joy is being a parent, everyday life, presence. Maybe you wanted to be a doctor because you were drawn to helping others and to the prestige of the profession, but later you found meaning in teaching, in supporting people's growth, in being someone important in their lives. Maybe your ambitions changed not because you gave up, but because you got to know yourself better. Sometimes we look back and mistake change for failure. We see our old dreams and think, I didn't deliver, I didn't persist, I gave up. But very often it wasn't a fall off the path, it was a turn. In moments like that, regret may be smaller than we think, because maybe you didn't abandon a dream. Maybe it simply stopped being yours, and you, rather than holding on out of loyalty to a past version of yourself, chose something that fit better with who you are now. That is also a form of growth, not dramatic, but very real. Fifth cause, fear of failure. And finally, the last cause, maybe the most painful one, because it's the only one that truly requires honesty with ourselves. Not with family, not with society, with our own fears. Sometimes we don't fulfill ambition, not because we don't want them, not because they changed, but because we're afraid to find out whether we can actually live up to them. We're afraid we'll try and fail, that someone will see it, that it will reveal we aren't as competent, talented, or special as we'd like to believe. We're also afraid that in pursuing what we want, we'll lose what we already have: safety, stability, control. Researcher Brené Brown spent years studying shame and vulnerability. Her work shows that fear of shame is one of the strongest brakes on human action. It's not failure itself that's hardest. It's what failure might say about us. So we choose a safe strategy, not trying, because a failure that never happened can be rationalized. You can tell yourself, it wasn't the right time. I had other priorities. The circumstances weren't right. It protects the ego. It protects your self-image. But a real attempt that ends in failure removes that shield. It forces a confrontation with limits, with the fact that maybe we're not ready yet, or we need more time, or it was harder than we expected. That's why it can feel unbearable. If this is your case, I want to tell you something important. This fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means what you want to do truly matters to you. And very often what we fear most points directly to the place where something could change inside us. But we'll talk about that in a moment, about what to do with that fear. An additional cause, the paradox of choice. There's one more cause I want to mention. Psychologist Barry Schwartz called it the paradox of choice. We live in a time with more possibilities than ever. We can do almost anything. We can be almost anyone. That sounds like freedom, but it can also be a trap. Because when you have too many options, it's harder to choose. And when you finally do choose, it's harder to be satisfied, because you can always wonder if another option would have been better. Schwartz ran a study in which he presented people with different sets of options. The group that had 6 options was significantly more satisfied with their choice than the group that had 24. More options didn't mean more happiness. That may explain why so many of us feel regret, not because we chose badly, but because we chose one path out of thousands, and all the other paths still exist in our minds as the question, what if? Now we're moving into the most important part. What can you do with this regret? How can you stop getting stuck in the past and start building the future? Before we begin, I want to tell you a few things. First, not every piece of advice is for everyone. We're all in different situations. What helps one person may not help another. Take what resonates. Leave what doesn't. Second, change doesn't have to be big or fast. We live in a culture of instant results. Change in 3 days, transformation in a week. But real change takes time. Small steps repeated consistently matter more than big leaps. Third, you can do this at your own pace. There's no race, no deadline. This is your life and your path. Alright, let's go through 5 steps that may help you. Step 1. Name what you feel. The first step may sound simple, even banal, but it's fundamental. You have to name what you feel. Psychologist Dan Siegel coined a phrase that became one of the foundations of modern psychotherapy. Name it to tame it. Name it so you can soften its grip. When we don't name something, it controls us. It sits inside like an invisible passenger, shaping our decisions, moods, relationships. But when we name it, we can start working with it. So, what exactly do you feel? Is it regret? Anger? Sadness? Envy? Disappointment? Shame? And toward whom do you feel it? Toward yourself? Toward family? Toward circumstances? Toward fate? I suggest a simple exercise. Take a piece of paper or open the Notes app on your phone and write, I feel that, because, for example, I feel angry at my parents because they didn't support my dreams. I feel regret toward myself because I was too cautious. I feel sadness because time passed and I don't know if I can still change anything. This isn't an exercise to judge you. It's an exercise to see clearly, because only when you can see what you feel can you decide what to do with it. Psychologist James Pennebaker at the University of Texas studied for decades something he called expressive writing. In his studies, participants wrote for 15 to 20 minutes a day about their deepest thoughts and feelings related to difficult experiences. The results were surprising. People who wrote about their emotions showed better physical health, fewer doctor visits, better performance at work and school, and improved mood. The act of naming emotions and putting them on paper had a therapeutic effect. You don't have to write every day, but it may be worth trying once, writing down what's been sitting in your chest and seeing how you feel afterward. I want to add one important thing about naming emotions. We often think we know what we feel, but when we look closer, it turns out one emotion is hiding another. For example, you think you're angry at your parents, but when you dig deeper beneath the anger is sadness. Sadness that you weren't important enough for them to listen. Or you think you regret a missed opportunity, but underneath is fear. Fear that it's too late now, that life passed you by. Naming emotions isn't a one-time exercise. It's a process. It takes patience and honesty, but it's worth it. Step 2. Separate the past from the future. The second step requires mental discipline. You have to learn to separate what you can't change from what you still have influence over. The past has already happened. You can't go back in time. You can't make different choices. You can't recover lost years. That sounds brutal, but it can be liberating. Because when you accept you can't change the past, you can stop spending energy trying to rework it and start directing that energy elsewhere. The Stoics, ancient Greek and Roman philosophers, had a powerful approach to this. They called it the dichotomy of control. Epictetus wrote, "Some things are within our power, others are not. Within our power are our judgments, impulses, desires, aversions, in short, everything that is our own doing. Not within our power are our body, property, reputation, positions, in short, everything that is not our own doing. The past isn't within your power. The future partly is. So the question is, what can you do now? What choices do you have today? What small steps can you take to move closer to who you want to be? Maybe you can't become an Olympian anymore, but maybe you can start running. Maybe you can't become a world-famous musician, but maybe you can take guitar lessons. Maybe you can't build a huge corporation, but maybe you can start a small side business. This isn't about recreating the exact same dreams from the past. It's about finding the essence of the dream and seeing how you can live that essence today. Step 3. Process regret, don't suppress it. The third step may be the hardest. It's about processing regret rather than suppressing it. Many people try to run from regret. They drown it out with work, alcohol, shopping, series. They tell themselves it's not worth thinking about. It's the past. Move on. But suppressed emotions don't disappear. They accumulate. And they return at unexpected moments, as sudden anger, as a depressive episode, as a sense of emptiness that seems to have no cause. Processing regret is different. It's allowing yourself to feel what you feel, without judging, without escaping, without trying to fix it immediately. Psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, known for the 5-stage model of grief, said grief isn't only a reaction to the death of a loved one. It's a reaction to any loss, including the loss of possibility, of dreams, of a version of yourself you could have become. A model includes 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. You don't have to go through them in order. You don't have to go through all of them, but it helps to know that what you're feeling is normal. If you feel anger, that's normal. If you feel sadness, that's normal. If you sometimes think you've processed it, and then suddenly you're back at the beginning, that's normal too. Grief isn't linear, it comes in waves, and that's okay. Practical techniques to process regret. I want to give you a few concrete techniques that can help. Not all of them will be for you. Choose what resonates. First technique, talk to your regret. It sounds strange, I know, but it can be surprisingly helpful. Sit somewhat quiet, close your eyes. Imagine your regret sitting across from you. What does it look like? What voice does it have? What does it say? And then answer it, tell it you see it, you understand where it came from. You thank it for trying to protect you. But now you want to move forward. Second technique, a farewell ritual. You can write a letter to your old dream, thank it for what it taught you. Then burn the letter or bury it in the ground. A symbolic goodbye can help close a chapter. Third technique, talk to someone close, not to find solutions, just to be heard. Sometimes saying something out loud brings relief. When to seek help. One important note. If the regret you feel significantly affects your daily functioning, if you can't work, can't enjoy things you used to enjoy, if you have thoughts that life isn't worth living, please seek professional support. A psychotherapist can help you process these emotions safely. That isn't weakness. That's wisdom, knowing when you need support. Step 4. Find the essence of the dream. The fourth step is very practical. Find the essence of your old dream. Dreams have layers. There's the concrete form. I want a cafe. I want to be a musician. I want to travel the world. But underneath the form is something deeper. A need, a value, an essence. Maybe the cafe symbolizes building community, a place where people gather. Maybe music was a way of expressing emotion. Maybe travel was about freedom and discovery. When you find the essence, you can look for other ways to live it, ways that fit your current life. Back to Mark's story. For him, the cafe was about community and creating space for people. Mark can't open a cafe now, but he could organize neighborhood meetups, start a book club, build an online community around something he cares about. It's not the same as a cafe, but it's the same essence. Here's an exercise. Think of your unfulfilled dream. Then ask, what was I really trying to get through this? What was the core of it? What need was I trying to meet? And then, how can I meet that need today in my current situation? Remember Joanna, the woman who dreamed of being a travel photographer? After her husband's death, she had time to think. She asked herself, what did I truly love about that dream? Was it fame? Earning money from photography? No. It was discovering the world, freezing moments, looking at reality through a lens and finding beauty. Joanna didn't become a professional travel photographer, but she bought a good camera. She started taking walks and photographing her city. She joined a local photography club. She began planning short trips. She's glad she didn't do it professionally, because then photography would have become work. This way it's joy. That doesn't mean her regret disappeared completely, but she found a way to live with it and still do what she loves. Remember Tom, the programmer who dreamed of music? Tom went through the same process. He asked himself, what did I really love about music? At first he thought it was fame, the stage, the applause, but as he dug deeper, he discovered something else. It was about creating, about expressing himself, about that moment when something in your mind becomes real. Music was his way of making something out of nothing. And then Tom realized something important. Programming is also creating. It's also that moment when something in your mind becomes real. Code became his new instrument. That doesn't mean Tom never feels regret. He still plays guitar some evenings. He still sometimes thinks, what if? But he understands the essence of his dream is already present in his life, just in a different form. Step 5. Start with one small action. And the last step, the simplest and the hardest, begin. You don't need a grand plan. You don't need to know exactly where you're going. You only need to take one small step. Psychologist B.J. Fogg at Stanford created the Tiny Habits method. His research shows big changes rarely stick, but small changes repeated consistently lead to big results. Fogg says, start with something so small you can't say no. Want to start exercising? Don't promise an hour at the gym. Promise one squat. Want to write a book? Don't promise a chapter a day. Promise one sentence. It sounds ridiculous, but it works, because the barrier isn't time or energy. The barrier is resistance to starting, and one small step breaks that resistance. So the question for you is, what can you do today? Today, before the end of the day? Maybe it's searching online for a course you've been thinking about. Maybe it's writing one sentence in your notes app. Maybe it's calling a friend who could support you. It doesn't have to be a big step. It only has to be a step. One more thing about small steps. We often think a small step is too small to matter, that you need something big for it to count. But that isn't true. Imagine you want to write a book. If you write one sentence a day, after a year you'll have 365 sentences, already several pages. If you write one paragraph a day, after a year, you'll have a first draft of an entire book. Small steps add up, day by day, week by week. And suddenly you realize you've come far, farther than you thought was possible. And at the end of this part, I want to say something about expectations. We live in a culture that loves success stories. We see people who, at 40, quit everything and started over, who achieved huge success after years of setbacks, who fulfilled their dreams against all odds. Those stories can be inspiring, but they can also be heavy because they create the impression that change must be spectacular to count. That if you don't quit your job and move to Bali, it isn't real change. That's not true. Change can be slow, invisible to others, and still real. Maybe your change is doing something you love once a week. Maybe it's stopping punishing yourself for the past. Maybe it's beginning to think about yourself with more kindness. All of it counts. There's research by psychologist Sonia Lyubomirsky at the University of California on what makes people happy. She found something interesting. Happiness doesn't primarily depend on big events. A promotion, a wedding, winning the lottery, these give a short-lived boost, and then we return to our baseline. What builds lasting happiness is everyday practices. Gratitude, connection, doing meaningful things. Small actions repeated over time. Which means you don't need a huge life overhaul to feel better. You need small steps, consistent ones. Yours. We're nearing the end. Let me summarize what we've talked about. Unfulfilled ambitions are part of many people's lives. They're regret tied to plans that didn't happen, to versions of ourselves we could have become but didn't. That regret can come from many sources. The pressure of safety, social expectations, lack of resources, the natural evolution of life, fear of failure, the paradox of choice. But whatever the cause, you can work with it. You can name what you feel. Separate the past from the future. Process regret instead of suppressing it. Find the essence of your dream. And begin with one small step. I want you to remember one thing. Your life isn't finished. Even if some chapters are already written, you can still write the next ones. I don't know how old you are. I don't know your exact situation. I don't know what limits you and what supports you. But I know this: as long as you're alive, change is possible. Maybe not the massive change you once dreamed of, but some change. Yours. And that is enough. At the very end, I want to say one more thing. Kindness toward yourself. Psychologist Kristin Neff at the University of Texas is a pioneer in research on self-compassion. Her studies show that people who treat themselves kindly, like they would treat a good friend, cope better with difficulties. They're more resilient, more willing to try new things, and paradoxically, more likely to reach their goals. Maybe for years you've punished yourself for past decisions. Maybe you've told yourself, I was stupid, I was a coward, I wasted my life. Maybe it's time to change that voice. Maybe it's time to say, I did the best I could at the time. I had limitations, I had fears, I had reasons, and that's okay. Self-criticism doesn't help change. Self-compassion does. Neff describes self-compassion as 3 elements. Kindness toward yourself instead of harsh self-judgment. A sense of common humanity. Knowing others suffer too, that you're not alone. Mindfulness. The ability to observe your emotions without becoming them. Next time you catch a self-critical thought, try something else. Ask yourself, what would I say to a friend in the same situation? And say it to yourself. It may feel awkward at first, unnatural, but with time it becomes easier. And with time, you notice that the inner critic quiets down. You allow yourself more room for mistakes. You live lighter. And I want to tell you one more thing. The regret you feel has value too. It isn't only a burden, it's also proof that those dreams mattered to you, that you wanted more from life, that you had a vision. Not everyone has those dreams. Not everyone has those ambitions, but you did, and that matters. It means you're someone who wants more, who sees possibilities, who can imagine a better version of yourself and the world. That part of you is still alive, still dreaming, still wanting, and that's good. Thank you for being with me through this whole episode. I know it wasn't an easy topic, and I appreciate you giving it your time. If this episode was helpful, I invite you to subscribe, not because I need numbers, but because it helps me know this work matters, that these conversations reach people who need them. In the next episodes, we'll talk about other parts of living fully. Fear of change, relationships, meaning. I hope you'll stay with me. And remember the question from the beginning. Write in the comments which plan or dream from your past still comes back to you sometimes. Your story might help someone else feel less alone. See you in the next episode. Take care.